Yeah.
So good morning to everyone joining us once again on our weekly webinar, the Lowdown in the Lockdown. And we're in for a really good webinar today. Really looking forward to it. And it's going to be very informative, loads of information. And I know you'll be glad you've spent 45, 50 minutes with us this morning on our weekly webinar. So just say, let the co-host, John Corey, say a quick hello before we do some housekeeping.
Good morning, everybody. Or should I say good day?
Good day, good day, good morning, depending on what part of the world you're in, but I think most are on the in the UK and Ireland today. So we always just give sort of 30 seconds just for people who are the stragglers, last minute hitches with the IT, which happens from time to time. While we're waiting to start officially, can I remind attendees that if you want to contribute, and we encourage people asking questions or making points, then please do so in the Q&A box, not the chat box. So we tend not to use the chat box at all. So please put your comments in the Q&A. And again, we do encourage people to, well, one, ask questions, but given the many professional people in property that we have on the webinar, you know, we'd definitely like you to give your input. If you've got some points you want to make on any points that we're making, or you've heard something and have relevant information, then please share it with us so we can share it then with the group. So we'll just give it another 30 seconds, then we'll kick off.
So it's interesting, David, now that we're in England, at least, starting to allow people who can't work from home to go back to work and other things. There's clearly a pickup in London in the traffic. It's not bad, but it's obvious, and you do hear more sounds. I'm not that far from London Bridge. You know, it's off in the distance, so at night you can hear more trains going in and out, things like that. So we're starting to see some changes on the ground, at least. Good, bad, or indifferent is not the point. It's just the changes observed.
Mm. Yeah, no, I think that is right. I think it's the same here in Northern Ireland for sure. Much more traffic on the roads. Okay, so let's kick off officially. So again, welcome everyone to our weekly webinar. We call this the Lowdown in the Lockdown, and it's very much designed to just be informative and to bring property people together and to give updates on what's happening and really just share some information. And they've been proven very, very successful. This is now number 7 of our webinars. So this is a joint webinar with Leo Prop Crowd, myself, David Johnson, MD of that property crowdfunding platform, and Mr. John Corey of Property Fortress. And we run this together. Now, we always like to start off just by giving a quick shout out to those in the NHS and also those who are involved in essential services. We are conscious that while hopefully lockdown is being relaxed and people are returning to a little bit of normality, there are, of course, still people in the NHS having to work long hours, being involved in caring for those that are sick. And of course, there are those who have lost loved ones, particularly through the COVID pandemic that we're currently going through. So we always like just to pause before we get into talking business and making money, just to acknowledge that our thoughts are still with those in the NHS, and they're doing a fantastic job for us all. So by way of agenda today, we'll do our normal Lowdown in the Lockdown property market update, a couple of points on working from home, and then we're going straight into our special guest today. And we're in for a real treat today with our special guest, Tina Wenham, very experienced. I know she's going to have a lot of value to add to the webinar today. So in terms of market update, John, you were saying that you've certainly noticed a increase in traffic, seems to be a bit of normality returning to London.
Well, I wouldn't say normality. In fact, I would stress that we won't be returning to normal for at least 2 years. So no one should kid themselves about getting back to normal. But we are seeing a shift in behavior, and it may be heading towards what we in our heads think of as normal. I think people should remember, though, the new normal, the one we haven't invented yet, is what we're heading towards, rather than getting back to the way it was. There's definitely going to be changes longer term from this. And it might take 2 years to get the whole world vaccinated. And if that vaccine only lasts for 6 to 12 months, 7 billion vaccinations every 6 to 12 months, that could be quite an interesting feat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I think certainly in Northern Ireland here, the traffic has increased, and definitely people are in a lot more positive mood about the next number of months. So we say still lots of fear, uncertainty. I know last week I was quite upbeat about the direction I felt we were heading, just based on talking to people, local councillors, politicians, and certainly some of the events in recent days has perhaps proven that was correct. Certainly all the press, where for weeks it was the negative and the sort of all that could go wrong and all the bad news. Now this week the press is very much on the good news side. Markets set to reopen, UK housing market getting a boost, etc., etc. Not that we take our lead from the press, John, but it is interesting that the press seem to be more positive at the minute.
Well, I think the press matters quite a bit from the point of view that when we're in the market, we're dealing with someone else. So if we're buying or selling, what they think matters to the transaction. It may not be accurate, may not be even close to accurate, but what they think matters. And they may be forming their opinion from the press or other sources that we don't know. So you need to be aware of what the conversations are. And I would also stress that it's neither negative or positive, it's the conversations. And people, we make our decisions based on how we understand the story, the narrative. And uncertainty implies that we don't have a story or a plan. We're confused, and we fix that by talking. So being in the conversation is actually positive, no matter what the conversation is.
I'd maybe disagree a little bit, though, in terms of the negativity and positivity. I think the press can set very much the social view on a topic just by what they focus on when it comes to their headlines. We don't agree that if the headlines are constantly negative, that affects people's confidence in the market.
So I'm a big believer in this positive mental attitude and that sort of thing. So yes, in that sense. The funny part is investors win if the press are negative. Our best, we pray for negative press because that depresses the seller's position. So if you want to buy bargains, you want negative press. If you want to actually get stuffed with full price deals, let the press go positive and everybody and their dog will be buying. And you as an investor will be competing with every idiot that's read the paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. And certainly not probably in the sense that now things do seem to be moving a little bit in the right direction. I appreciate a long way to go, but certainly the light at the end of the tunnel seems brighter than it did perhaps 2 weeks ago. Let's put it that way. Then things like the opportunities, the unintended economic consequences, as we've come to call them. Now people are beginning to think, right, I better get myself organized here because things may start improving, in which case I need to start getting ready to do what I'm going to do, whatever that plan is.
Yeah, I would say that people miss the starting gun, so they should have already started to prepare. But that doesn't mean you can't start now. There are going to be unintended economic consequences, and they're not predictable. So people should jump on it and sort of get their house in order because there'll be opportunities. It's whether you can take advantage of them.
Yeah, very much so. So a wee bit of a quiz. Let's see if anyone knows who this person is. Stick it in the chat box for us, please. The Q&A. I'm just curious.
In the Q&A, not the chat box.
Oh, sorry. The Q&A. Sorry. Yes. The Q&A as opposed to chat box. And I want to see if anyone who's on top of the game or who's listening.
Even if you don't know his name, what does he do?
Yeah.
Jules answered, I think. What do you think, David?
Hang on, let me just double check.
By the way, everybody could see the Q&A, so.
Yeah, absolutely. So once the answer's in and everyone knows who it is, so you are correct. Well done, Jules. So this is Robert Jenrick, who is the key man for us in the property world over the last 12 to 24 hours. So he is the Secretary of State for Housing, and he made his announcement yesterday, the 13th. And you can go on and have a look at his full press release. But just to summarize, he certainly has given a clear pathway for builders to be back on sites in a managed way, obviously keeping social distancing. And he also indicated we'll call it a type of fast track for the planning process, which means we can start getting that process moving, the log jam broken, so that we can start to sort of move that side of the market, which is so important to transactions and competing deals. And he also referred or talked about deferred payments to local councils for small developers. So measures announced yesterday that all should have a positive effect, John, hopefully on the housing market, stroke development market.
On the development side, I'd probably agree, but I'm not sure how these things will play out. This bottom one, the 3-month ban on evictions, I understand the logic and I understand the need for it. At the same time, mortgage holidays are not being viewed as a positive sign for investors when it comes to the lenders. So landlords could be squeezed in the middle on that last one.
Yeah, no, that's true. So certainly for those who haven't had a look at this, you can obviously go on to social media and you'll get the full statement from the Secretary of State for Housing. It's worth sort of reading through it just to keep yourself abreast on what's happening. So any last minute comments, John, on the market currently before we move on to the next topic?
So we're in uncertain times, which means that these things have been announced. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily always going to be positive or negative. What you have to do is be nimble and adjust and be prepared to change. Don't assume that now these are fixed in concrete and nothing will ever change and it's all positive. Some of these could backfire. Some of these could get in the way of other things that you were assuming. So just being nimble is where you're going to win.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Okay. So working from home this week. So rather than picking a couple of tips and giving advice on working from home, I thought I would just highlight the tax implications of employees working from home. So if you happen to be an employee who's now currently at home in lockdown, or you employ staff who are currently at home in lockdown, then just be aware the HMRC has put out some guidelines on particularly expenses for employees working from home. So if you're not aware of that and you haven't looked at it, I suggest you do that because it'd be beneficial. One thing they did indicate was that there should be a written agreement in place between the employee and the employer where there is a work from home situation. I dare say not everyone has actually put that in place, and they have issued clear guidelines on things like broadband, IT equipment, what's taxable, what's not taxable. So again, it's well worth looking at that if you haven't done so. So just really pointing you in that direction. And furloughed workers are not included in that scheme, but that's pretty obvious. So again, we're not giving anyone advice, just to obviously highlight that. This is just sharing information, but just pointing you to the fact there has been some recent changes within HMRC on this matter. So any observations on that, John? Just a quick look at that today.
Yeah, other than talk to your accountant. And if you don't have an accountant, it's a great time to go find one. Yeah,
that's a good point. Take good. I think the accountants. I think the only slight downside of that is, or the challenge of that is, John, most accountants I know right now are completely snowed under and may not be taking on new business. But certainly that's the right thing to do, is try and find one. But I know there between
I can suggest one. So I run independent of this, I run every 2-week session, and one of the panelists is an accountant, and he's been providing updates and things like this. So if you want to get in touch with me, I can connect you on it. And I'm pretty comfortable to say he could take you on because he's running a whole firm of people. He's the head for the accountancy practice.
Okay, very good. So that's you can get in touch with John if you have any questions on that front. Okay, so let's get straight into our special guest today, and I've really been looking forward to this one today. We have had a look at the property market, different aspects of it through different eyes from developers and investors. And today we're going to look at the current property market through the eyes of a letting and management professional, as well as someone who's involved in investment. So she wears a number of hats which gives her certainly a great degree of knowledge and experience. Now, just by way of introduction, I see Tina's unmuted herself, which was great, on her camera. So by way of introduction, just Tina runs two main businesses, Target 5 and Sussex Property Partnership. Been involved in over 2,000 transactions in the last 20 odd years. Worked for National PLC developers, and has even been the president of the Brighton and Hove Estate Agents Association. So that's quite an impressive CV, Tina, and welcome to the webinar today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So as you know, what we do is really just work through a bit of a Q&A and stuff, but even just initially, before we move on to the slides, just a little bit about where you live, your current situation, background.
Yeah. So currently based on the south coast in Sussex. Actually, I live in Worthing area, but my two businesses that I have with my business partner, Andy Babayan, are Target 5 Property Consultants and Sussex Property Partnership. They cover the whole of Sussex. Target 5 Property Consultants is specifically sourcing, development, consulting on property deals, planning, advice around conversions, that sort of thing. Doing our own developments for clients as well, investors, and everything in between. Sussex Property Partnership is the lettings and property management business. They're two separate businesses, but very much married. One can survive without the other, but they are much better together. And they our lettings and property management business predominantly traditionally has been dealing with high-end HMO property sharer properties, traditionally for students. Was sort of born out of a highlighted need from our investor clients that we were sourcing properties for, to do a specifically detailed job in that particular field. And we were finding that letting agents we were using previously were far too broad and general and not specific enough in that particular area. So that's why we did that.
How many properties do you manage, just roughly?
At the moment, probably about 70 to 80. We've been through a bit of a consolidation period, and that's circa about 600 rooms though. So it's that we have large blocks to one-bedroom flats as well, but we more look at our portfolio as a room by room basis. So our residents, we don't call them tenants, they're residents. They are individually treated rather than household treated. There's obviously elements to it which are household, but it's
I in a previous life, going back to the early 2000s, myself and my wife managed about 60.
Right.
Sort of, I left. We have that T-shirt, and
yeah.
you know what it's like, and the challenges. It's not an easy business to run successfully or profitably.
No.
So if you're managing involved with sort of 70, that's a big chunk, and I can certainly appreciate the complexity of doing that. So I'll hand over.
Before we go on, Tina, I know before we started the recording or the broadcast, you had mentioned that you just come off a call about how your companies, or both of them, are planning this transition out of what was the current rules to the slightly more relaxed rules and the health and safety type side of the business. Anything you want to say quickly?
Yeah, I mean, we've just done a quick risk assessment across both of the businesses. The lettings and management business is obviously far more at risk because of the general nature of that business. The contact with additional people we have had to be less remote with that already throughout this process. So we've adopted some new normals, as you call them, John, earlier, to help us with that. Getting tenants to do videos of maintenance is one of the biggest things that we've managed to bring out of this. Just stopping that need for more people going into properties than normally you would have a maintenance person go in and quote and come back and go back again, whereas we're really looking at that. So yeah, just there's some really good guidance actually on the HSE Health and Safety Executive website about this. So if anybody's kind of looking for that, or if anybody wants to message me afterwards, we can share what we're doing. I'm happy to do that. but
Cool.
the biggest thing for us was how quickly we had to jump into it, because it was kind of noticed was going to happen. It was like overnight it happened, and we're going to be reopening our offices on Monday, so we're just preparing for that, just taking some time to make sure that we're in, set up for that. And also sort of on the peripheral, also our construction sites, we have about 6 or 7 live construction sites which we had to completely shut down. So just how we deal with subcontractors, because we have to make sure that they're being responsible as well. So it's just kind of being mindful of all that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're almost going to sort of reverse a little bit to where we were a minute ago, but even how did you get involved in property in the first place? What was it that sort of attracted you to this as a career and a business?
Like a lot of people that I speak to, certainly, it was a happy accident. I was out, just finished school, and sort of summer, deciding what I was going to do after that. And a friend of mine was working for an estate agent in Hove, a national estate agents, your move, and she was going on holiday, and they needed a 2-week telephone cover, literally somebody to sit on the phones and answer the phones. And she said to me, come and meet my boss. And I went and met him, and he said, yeah, come and answer the phones for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, he said, right, we want you to have a job. And I was like, well, I want to do A-levels, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. I was 16 at the time. And he said, well, why don't you work part-time with us? And it was all but commission only. I think my basic wage was something like 7.5 grand a year back then. And it was all really heavily weighted on commission. And I went off and I did my A-levels, and I made sure that I did those. And my dad was very clear, you can do this, but you have to do your A-levels. And off I went. And I remember the day when I sat down with my dad, who was expecting me to go off to university. I wanted to be a teacher, funnily enough. And he went, I said, yeah, no, I'd quite like to do this property thing. I'm not going to go to university. I'm going to take a year out, no intention of going back. But yeah, to just stem from there, really. And I then did various jobs around general estate agency. And after about 3 or 4 years of kind of moving around estate agency companies, an opportunity to work with a local, quite a large local to Brighton estate agent. So anybody who's local to Brighton will know them, Mission McKay. Their land department had an opening. Initially it was for a PA, and that was actually a step down for me, but I really wanted to get into land and new homes. So I took that step down, and very quickly developed through that, dealing with land sales, probably within my first year of being there, working with Barratt Homes. I remember very clearly my first very large deal. I think it was with who are now, it was David Persimmon, Persimmon Homes, and it was a £6 million deal, which when you're that kind of, I think it was 22 or something like that. And I remember the day it exchanged unconditionally, and I remember like just this feeling of like, oh my god, £6 million. Now it kind of feels a bit insignificant with some of the deals that I've done since, but at the time that was pretty impressive. Then developed through the new homes, dealt with a lot of new homes and sales and marketing, taking everything from Mr. House owner who's got a plot in their garden, helping them develop that into more profitable, all the way up to, as I say, the national PLC developers. Then the 2008 hit, and all the jobs in that kind of sector were very, very unstable. But the company that I was working for was very keen to keep me on. So I went on after kind of a brief period of them kind of mothballing lots of offices. I reopened some of their offices for them, taking 3 offices from a negative position into a positive position for them. Met my business partner, my now business partner, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, and was selling him property for him and his clients. And 2 years ago, we decided to go into business together. So,
yeah, and this is Andy Babian that you mentioned earlier. He's your business partner in both
in both
Target 5 and Sussex.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Okay.
And yeah, really since then we've been cleaning house a bit and just kind of pushing forward with the business. So this has obviously been quite a strained time for us and everyone, but in a weird kind of way I've enjoyed it. So
good. Right, I'll let John sort of go through the next two with you. So
So the COVID-19, I asked you earlier, maybe preempting this slightly, but other insights that you receive when it comes to perspective of the market, or how you've dealt with forward planning for development sites or anything else?
I think the first thing which was really clear in this was not to panic. Born out of every kind of difficult situation, there are learnings, and Andy and I are quite focused when it comes to making sure that we get on with stuff. We very quickly sat down and looked at what we could do, not what it meant we couldn't do anymore. So we assessed the situation across both businesses. The initial need was with the lettings and management business. We really needed to make sure that we found a way for that to keep trading. The biggest impact on that was initially tenants not paying their rent because they just thought they could, because the guidance, unless you really read it from the government and really understood it and really took the time to think about what does that mean for me, initially it kind of just said, oh, you can have a rent holiday, and it didn't really give any, or you don't have to pay your rent. And also one of the other things which came out of it is the universities, specifically locally, sent out a directive to all the local press, all the local letting agents, and all of their students, saying we don't think that you should have to pay rent during this time. So we had a big part of our residents then say, we're not going to pay our rent. So there was quite a lot of work from my team in the lettings business to educate them and to deal with that side of it. But firstly, that was going to have a big impact on the fees, because if there's no rent coming in, we can't charge fees to landlords. So it was that simple. So we needed to make sure that we were protecting their position, but still being empathetic to what those tenants were going through. And if they had a genuine issue, we were helping them through it. The biggest demographic that we saw were having an issue were international students and international tenants, where they had to go home. And some of our landlords, did allow people out of contracts and allow rent holidays, and it was just about understanding the legislation. But then on the Target 5 business, we wanted to find a way, because predominantly we had traditionally been dealing with conversions of traditional houses into HMOs or flats or whatever, the right thing for that, adding value or adding square footage to that property was for our investor clients. And obviously that couldn't happen anymore. There was a very clear stop in the market. The finance market wasn't really allowing for that anymore. So we wanted to look at what we could do. And we very quickly embarked on a project to focus on sourcing genuine off-market opportunities where we could add value to land, houses, gardens, mixed use, commercial premises, anything where we could find value could be added for our investor clients, and that's what Andy and I have very, very much been focusing on, and obviously working with you guys as well to look into that. We also did a bit of tidying up. We've been doing website rebranding, making sure that all of our policies are in order and our processes are as good as they could possibly be. So there was lots we could do, but it definitely has impacted us. So we just had to be quite positive.
Just to fill the crowd in slightly, so I'm actually working with T5, Tina and Andy. Andy and I met a number of years ago through my property meet in London, and then I went down to Brighton at one point. Andy reached out, I think it was in November. He was thinking about how do you raise money to expand the business. So come time of the COVID-19, and it was pretty much decided that we'd collaborate to a strategy in place so that the company Target 5 could raise money for projects, and that's resulted in a case study that's on the Leo Prop Crowd website, so you can check it out. There'll be some others coming up in about a week, and these are showing you what they've done in the past. So as Tina mentioned, there was an opportunity to look at the positive, or to recognize, like, where are we now? What can we do? So clean up, getting messages sorted, getting out the information. So what do you see happening? Number question 3 there is, if you're looking out 3, 6, 9 months, so the balance of this year, granted it could change in a week, and we could have all kinds of new lockdowns or something, but what are you thinking at this stage?
For us, the focus is still finding new opportunities for investors to buy, making sure we're using our real honed in expertise to make sure that we can add value to it. And it really hasn't changed in that respect. You know, we want to continue to make money for our investors, and for us essentially, but there are some real positives that have come out of this, and a lot of it for me has come from looking at how I manage my time effectively as well, and how I get the most out of everything I'm looking at. And I think working from home, and a lot of people in this industry and other industries that I've been speaking to have found that this isn't a normal working from home environment. There's a lot of pressure on everybody to feel like you're being really productive and everything. But I've really worked out that you can save a lot of time from not actually traveling to places if you don't need to. So you can use your time much more effectively. There are some really great tools out there for finding opportunities, and if you know what you're doing and know what you're looking for, you can really be focused in your searching. From the lettings perspective as well, it's funny, you mentioned earlier, John, about the influence of the press and that having a positive or a negative impact on businesses. But for us, the lettings business has actually been really, really busy. A lot of the home movers and sales that were stalled still wanted to move house. So we had loads of inquiries for renting properties rather than oh, well, I still got to move for this job I've got starting in September, October, November, or whatever it is. I still need to move because of the schools. I still need to do this. I still want to plan for my future, but I'm being hindered by this, you know, unusual circumstance. So what can I do? And the other thing we had from that, which we're going to continue to do and work on, is the care sector and the frontline workers. A lot of those have needed to move out of their family homes. So we did a bit of a special offer for them. They had no fees, and some of our landlords allow some reduced rents on some of our rooms for them to move into, to allow for that to happen. We've actually got a house in Kent Town in Brighton that is completely full of care workers who are working at the Royal Sussex County Hospital, and are living there specifically so that they don't go home to their families. So there's lots of things which we've kind of marketing ideas and things like that which we've developed. Video tours have been amazing. We've rented so many properties from video tours as well, and a lot of our agents that we're going out to view properties through as well are doing that for us. They're sending us a video of a property and saying, is this going to work for you guys, or whatever, before it hits the market. So there's things which we're going to adopt, definitely.
Cool. If people have questions, use the Q&A to post your question, and David and I will make sure that either we or Tina address it. David, I'll leave it over to you now.
Yeah, I've just one question certainly to dive in a bit on. I mean, clearly you're a professional business person. You're running multiple businesses, you know, family and all of that. So you mentioned time management. I think that's one area that people have had to, you know, come to terms with working from home during lockdown. So is there anything tangible you said you found time management has improved? Was that through
definitely.
a time management sort of app, or what's different now, or what are you doing different?
So I find Monday.com really useful for keeping an eye on my tasks, and if I'm doing them in the time when I should be doing them. But I really clearly define my diary. So if I'm going to go for a 15-minute sit in the garden, because you can't sit at your screen for or the whole day, you really need to have your breaks to be productive, then it's in my diary. I'm walking out of the room, and I'm a little bit of a control freak. So if it's in my diary and it's telling me to leave the desk, then I feel like I'm compelled to do it. And I've found that having video meetings with people so much more productive because people are really focused to talk about what you are actually doing. And also for us, because we cover such a big area, you know, sometimes I can be driving to Littlehampton and then later on I'll have to be in Eastbourne. Actually, could that meeting be done on a video instead? And actually that 45 minutes in the car that I'm going from Brighton to Eastbourne or from Littlehampton, or, you know, can be used more productively to keep up to date with my admin or my social media or things like that. So really clearly defining stuff in your diary.
Can you see that sort of business habit staying after we turn to whatever normality is? But let's just say there's no restrictions on movement. Can you see your business life in the future actually changing to more like now and like less meetings?
I still love a face-to-face, because I think that you can't, you know, there's no substitute for that reading people, and it is much more difficult on a video conference to read that kind of reaction to what you're saying and things. But things like yesterday, for example, we're dealing with a site at the moment where we're trying to get an option agreement agreed. And there was a lack of understanding from the agent and the seller and their solicitor. And in the end, I just went, let's just all have a Zoom chat. And we had a round the table chat within 25 minutes of there being a question on it, and solved the problem within 15 minutes. Whereas in old world, then you'll have, you know, you'll have, you know, the solicitor saying, oh, well, I need to write a letter, and the seller saying, oh, well, I don't really want to do that. And it would just been probably a 2 or 3 week period of backwards and forwards, whereas we resolved the situation quite quickly. So I think, yes, I think we can definitely see these going forward.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think you're correct on that. It's interesting to hear that impact from a business like yours. I think one of the things I've found that I've had to keep an eye on is that while you can do a task list for the day, it's dividing up what is income earning activities and what's actually moving the needle financially versus, you know, things like redoing the website and things like improving processes. And you can get very, very busy on things that don't actually move the needle financially. And that's one thing I've tried to keep an eye on.
Which is why just defining it in the diary, right? This is my hour for social media, or this is my hour for making client calls, or whatever. So, yeah.
Okay. Quick question just in there from Ian. For an investor looking to invest in the short term, where would you be directing them for the most interesting deal in terms of capital appreciation? And do you currently see any distressed property sales?
It's probably too early to say distressed, if I'm really honest. We've certainly been re-looking at everything we're buying at the moment, and making sure for ourselves and for clients, and making sure that it still makes sense. Now, we're not in the business of screwing clients down or trying to make making a ridiculous offer or antagonizing the situation. It's still important that the deal works for everybody involved, because that's really important to us. But there will be some distress sales coming out of this, I think. In terms of where to look,
$1 million question.
Yeah, I mean, talk to me. Well, I mean, we do have
to dive in slightly. There's this in the question was short term or near term or whatever, and I think property, with all the friction buying and selling, it's not an easy sector to do short term deals. Maybe an option deal, maybe planning is short term if it's 6 to 12 months, but we don't know the planners are even going to show up, right? So the short term is very painful in the property sector because you have such high transaction costs and you don't necessarily have the ability to get in and out quickly. Every property is fairly unique. So I'd be cautious about people looking for short-term opportunities. If they're not thinking at least a year or two for their money being tied up, it's going to be a struggle, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely agree. You know, whenever I'm speaking to new investor clients who are thinking about doing this, I always say, you know, my benchmarks. Funny, interesting that you say 2 years or whatever. I always say 5 years is where I'm at. You know, if you're in this for less than 5 years, if you're going into a property opportunity for less than 5 years, then it might not be, certainly not in my area. It's hard, it's difficult to make those kinds of returns that we're looking for in that area, in that time.
So what type of returns do you look for?
So if we're looking at HMO high yield hold, then anything in terms of a rental income, so monthly rental yield, I'd be looking for something around the sort of 7% net. Capital appreciation is a slightly more difficult one to quantify at the moment, to be honest with you, but yeah, that's the sort of returns we're looking for.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our Q&A. Is there any last minute thoughts or points you'd like to make, just on observations or anything?
No, I think we're excited to kind of get back into the office and to see the team and to make sure, you know, we keep moving forward, keep focused, hit the ground running is massive for us, you know, and that's what we've been preparing for these last few weeks, is hitting the ground running, edging our way to the front of the pack, making sure that we're the people that, you know, we are able to source those properties for our clients, you know, find those really, you know, juicy properties, juicy deals that are out there if you know how to find them. And yeah, if, you know, obviously, you know, if anybody wants to reach out and connect, then speak to you guys and we'll happily have a chat in more detail.
Yep, and then get you on LinkedIn. You know, so get you there via reach out to you.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, listen, Tina, thank you very, very much for taking the time to come on. I know it's a busy day for you, getting ready for next week, but that was really, really good insight. Really valuable. Love your enthusiasm for the business. You're sort of the person that obviously gets up and can't wait to get in the office and can't wait to get going for the day. And it's always great to be involved and talk to people with that passion for what they do. So wish you every success in opening the office. Hope it goes well. And thank you very much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks,
no problem
guys.
at all. All right. So that was really, really interesting, John. I really enjoyed that.
I mean, they're very down to earth. Between the two of them, she's worked on over 2,000, as I had said, and I know Andy and his historical companies that have been coming together with Tina. They've got 350 HMOs or single lets or whatever projects they've done. So there's quite a bit of depth of experience, and I've known Andy longer than Tina, and I've been sort of watching his progress and now their progress. So it is quite good to hear from people who are out there making it happen.
Yeah, no, very much so. Okay, another wee quote from Benjamin Franklin, no less. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. This is a really good quote, which leads us nicely into our modules. I know we've been talking about these over the last number of weeks. We had a false start for this week in terms of the delivery of the modules, but I'm glad to announce that they will definitely 100% run next week. So starting next Tuesday.
Yeah,
May.
To be fair, if anybody was on last week's afternoon session, so David's family had a death in the family, absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19, but that really sort of reset the timing a little. So instead of this Tuesday through Friday, it'll be next week. It was just a little bit of a gap that no one could have predicted.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, John. And we have the content approved by our financial promotions authorized body. So we're all ready to go and really looking forward to delivering this next week. So again, to remind people, and again, I have numerous people texting me, emailing me saying, yes, we're definitely doing this, but they haven't actually booked as yet. So obviously to get the information, to get the login details, you have to make the booking. So for those that are in that company, make sure you get on and get your booking made. So these are literally 4 modules. They're 1 hour and interactive Zoom sessions. So, you know, through the Q&A, you'll be able to ask questions and we'll be able to interact with you. So we want it to be that way. It's not just John and me talking for 50 minutes to an hour. We want this to be valuable to the participants and for you to get questions answered that are relevant to you and your business. So the 4 modules, John, we feel cover, you know, the main aspects of property development, property investment, and crowdfunding, and really give people a good overview on what they need to know and understand.
I mean, it's essentially taking people on a journey, and the presumption is that you want to raise money. So therefore, how to go from where you are, whatever that may mean in your business, and get to the point where you can now launch your campaign, raise money, get on with your next project, similar to what Tina was alluding to and what Target 5 is doing.
Yeah, yeah. And even for, well, primarily it's for fundraisers, as John says, even for investors, better understanding things like deal analysis, deal structuring, compliance. They're also relevant as you assess deals. We had Antoine on last week, and he talked about some of the, for instance, compliance checks that he will do on a potential fundraiser before he even starts to analyze the deal. So as an investor, this is actually useful as well, just to give you a better understanding of what fundraisers need to do to satisfy sort of your criteria for investing, which is interesting. So you see along the bottom. Sorry, go ahead, John.
A slight tip, even if your intention is to raise money, my strong suggestion is the first thing you should do is figure out how to invest some money. Take £100 or whatever it is, find a deal that makes sense to you. You really do need to understand the investor journey and how investors feel and how they go through the process. It would be rather lame if you said, hey, I got this great project, I want to raise some money for you, telling a bunch of people, and someone says, okay, it sounds good, how do I do it? And you say, well, I don't know, I've never invested. It just doesn't land well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So these modules can be done all 4 together, or people can select individual modules. We know some people are already experienced perhaps in one aspect, but are looking to learn more about another aspect. So each module is $9.97, or you can do the whole lot for a bit of a discount. So again, as I said before, John and I are not trying to make money out of these. I don't think we'd go too far on splitting $9.97, John, per module. But what we're doing is making sure people see the value of actually parting with a little bit of money. It shows that your intent, that you're willing to pay to learn. Anything that comes free, well, I think we all agree and experience, people just don't treat it with the respect it's due. So there's a small sort of ticket price on the way in.
Yeah.
There will be a recording that can be purchased at a later date. But you know, these are designed to be informative. 1 hour, you can block it in your diary, and at the end of the 4 modules, you'll know a lot more about these aspects of property investment, development, crowdfunding than you knew before.
So to be clear, because I know this question came up with someone else, if you buy the recorded, you make the purchase for the recorded price, that includes attending live. The point of the live and why we're trying to influence people to show up live, and it's fine if you buy the recording and show up live, is it's meant about interaction, and we want to have some live discussions about individual cases, individual situations, what people are actually trying to do. This is essentially co-creation with the audience. So we want people to be engaging and raising points about what they're trying to do.
Yeah, very much so. So again, that starts next Tuesday. It's 11 a.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you'll see the link in a minute where you can book. So also, John and I have a joint consultancy package that we offer. Both of us get approached an awful lot about working directly with fundraisers or indeed investors sometimes. So we've put this package on, which kind of brings both our skill sets and our resources together into one package. It's $1997. That's 4 hours of live Zoom sessions. And then there's a further 4 hours of deliverables that we have to do before or after some of those sessions. And then there's ongoing Q&A as well, for 60 days. So this really means that John and I become part of your team for the duration, and we can bring a lot of value. You can see written down the left-hand side the different things that we can work with you on. And certainly this is something that people have found very valuable, John, and the ones that we've done.
Correct. Well, it's definitely, there are some people who are at a different stage, and what they need is actual hand holding or direct feedback. They want to share the work. They want us to dig into the biggest strategic questions that their business has, and they want to plug into people that we know through what is referred to as a black book of contacts. And so it's not just for the people that just want information, go to the class. The people that want to actually have some sort of real sort of meaty conversations about what the next 6 months to 2 years might look like in their specific business and how to repurpose or reposition their business, that's what this is more about.
Yeah, indeed. So you can reach out to John or myself on that. So this is really the last slide, the training module. Again, next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 11 a.m. for 1 hour. There is the link that you need to click to make your booking and your payment. So you can screen grab that or take a quick picture with your mobile phone. And I say, particularly the ones that are sort of texting me saying, yeah, I need to go on and get that done. Well, get it done. There's the link. And there's my contact details, mobile and email. And of course, you can reach out to John via any means that you have for him, but certainly you'll get him on LinkedIn. He's very active on that, or Facebook. So that really, John, is the end of the webinar today. Really enjoyed that one today, and very valuable, I think. Any last minute thoughts?
I think we'll get more people like Tina on, and it's very clear when you listen to her tone. She's right in the heart of quite a bit of stuff. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. The lady's very experienced, and it comes across. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much so. And that's what these webinars are designed for, John. We're trying to sort of bring people on that can add value, because of their own personal work experience. It's not all about theory. It's about people actually doing it in the cold face. And that's what attendees want to hear. They want to hear real stories of what's happening in the market.
Very good.
So there we are. So listen, leave you all. Have a successful rest of the week, and of course, above all, stay safe.